what would you say that grassroots sports is all about?
Um, it's a great question. I think it's a multifaceted question. I don't think there is one thing that is there for. I think you have to look at the individual, and I think that's where we have to educate a lot of coaches on understanding, especially at the grassroots levels. There is a sort of a plethora of reasons why kids participate in sports. For some, friendships. For some, it's becoming competitive. For some, it's to stay off the streets. It's a multitude of reasons. I think we'll be doing it a disservice to pinpoint and say it's one given thing. I think you have to look at the individual and identify with them what is it and why is it that drives them there. Um, More often than not, there is a love for a sport or the sport that the participant is in. That is not always the case. I have seen multiple kids who don't necessarily enjoy the sport itself, but enjoy the social aspects of it. If you want, in a true grassroots sense, I would say the social aspects are more important than the competitive environment, right? In the US, where I am right now, that is a very, very fine line. Some who consider themselves grassroots are actually competitive, and the reverses can also be true. So again, I know, sorry, that was a long answer to a question, but I think it's difficult to say it's one thing or the other.
You mentioned competitive sport there, top level sports, kids who are perhaps also going in for the social aspect as well. What is the difference between social sport and competitive sport, or social sport and elite sport?
Again, great question. Sometimes it's the only difference is the label that's been put on the environment that the kids participate in. There are many cases where something has been named elite when it's not. To me, the way I break down elite is the moment you don't pay to participate in a sport is when you're elite, right? But until you pay, it's grassroots. So whether that's £2 for your weekly fees, or in the US, it's thousands of dollars, the moment that you stop paying is the moment that you're in an elite environment. And I'm not talking about kids who will get financial support and whatnot. So I think that's the biggest difference. In terms of sort of what drives, what else? I mean, yes, of course, at a higher level, kids are more proficient at the given sport. There can be more structure to it, but I think the money piece is the biggest. The moment that you don't pay for something that's when you can call yourself elite. And until you do, whether or not you like it or not, is you're part of a grassroots program, and that's okay. I don't think there's any shame in that.
That's a fascinating definition, which could possibly have its own dedicated episodes just to itself. That definition could be expanded to include adult fee-paying members of a community club, of an amateur club.
Yeah, absolutely.
That there are elite level or first division players in minority sports up and down the UK, right across the world, who are paying to play for the club, including women's footballers in the Scottish First Division at times, or historically that's been the case. For National League or Premier League hockey players in the UK. Would you also include those people in grassroots?
I should probably have prefaced it and sort of stick with my sports. I think it's unfair for me to give an opinion on sports that I'm not involved with. However, I do think that there can be some transference in that the moment that you stop paying for something and it's either paid for or you get paid to do it, that means a whole set of different dynamics, brings a different set of pressures and whatnot. Because if you're getting paid or have someone pay something for you, more often than not, there is pressure on you to deliver results, right? Whereas in the grassroots, as much as everyone wants to win, it would be unlikely someone getting kicked out of a club or sold to a rival club if they aren't, producing results. But again, it may be unfair for me to pass judgment on other sports. So I will certainly say, in my experiences for the sport of soccer or football, that's what I've observed.
Sideways question to that. What is the difference between adult sport or senior sports and youth sports?
Well, that's a great question. There are many differences, but there's also a ton of similarities, right? You see five-a-side games, they're still leagues, they're still competitive, right? Adults take it very seriously, but at the same time, it's amateur, right? In its true sense, it's grassroots, meaning that participants are paying for it, and that they're not being sponsored or paid for. It may be very, very rarely someone on the team has a multi-million-dollar company and they can sponsor the jerseys for the team or whatever. But I think the difference between adults and kids sports is honestly just the age, right? I mean, adults are adults, kids are kids. You look at it, at the adult level, you have elite level, right? Or professional level. And you have amateur level. Same with kids. You have professional academies and you have, grassroots clubs. So in that sense, besides the fact that when kids or when people turn 18, they are quote unquote adults and have more say in what they want to do, then I don't really think that there is much difference, right? Because teams will still need a coach. Teams will still need players. So it's really just the age that's different.